Welcome to another production
Hello,
of
everyone.
Gibby's Treasures.
Welcome back. So, what I got here is an audio for you guys to listen to, no video for you to watch. So, what I have is the audio of a guy. He talks a little bit of some history and talks things about it helps you out in court and what gold and silver, how it is connected to some things of this nature. And this is going to be a 2-part video session. So let's say we get right to it and listen to what he has to say. So sit back, relax, get your snacks, popcorn, and here we go.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm James Harden. I'm a member of the AAT, Americans Against Tyranny. And we're here tonight to talk about some personal traffic experiences and to give you folks some motions and stuff that you can use and show you ways to set up your own legal briefs to file in the courts to beat these road Nazis. So anyway, I'm right now in the middle of a court case, and I've sent off to the Secretary of State, which I suggest everyone does right off the bat. And you send off for their statement of elected officer, which is that applies to the judges, and the oath of office also applies to judges, and it also applies to the district attorneys. And an anti-bribery statement. In the state of Texas, all officers have to have an anti-bribery statement on file where they took an oath swearing that they didn't accept any bribes to obtain that position and swearing they will not take any bribes to continue to hold that position. And also, I asked for registration of foreign propagandists and foreign agent registration statements. That has a lot to do with the Bar Association. Personally, I've been before the judges and arguing with them, and the DA will be over here, yak, 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 and I'll just keep saying, I object. You know, I haven't even seen his foreign agent registration statement. And as per Rabinowitz versus Kennedy, foreign agent registration, 1938, he is required by law to have a foreign agent registration statement on file. The reason is this: anybody who is a representative or such things, such as a representative, accountant, anything like that, for a foreign principal or power, must be registered under this act, the Foreign Agent Registration Act. And my argument is just simply that I haven't seen this guy's foreign agent registration statement. The judge looks at me and goes, well, he's the prosecuting attorney for the city or for the state. And I say, I object. He has no part of our local, state, or federal government. He's a dues-paying, card-carrying member to a private club. And his oath and his duties and his best will and interest is to that club and not to the city or the state or the citizens thereof. So you want to have this one that I sent off for personally for Judge Reagan Helm of the County Criminal Court Number 1 of Harris County, Texas, and Officers R.T. Hatcher and M.W. Sally of Houston Police Department, Harris County, and attorneys Michelle Bennett, Che Taylor, and Robert Summerlin. Robert Summerlin is the one that I had a personal run-in with at the courthouse number 1 of the county criminal courthouse. And Mike Hawkins, I don't know if any of you guys know him, but he's a friend of ours and another member of the AAT, and he went with me that day to court. And I filed a motion that day for a notice of motion. Anytime you file a motion, you need to have a notice of motion to your city attorney office, and then, which pretty much looks like this. I don't know if you guys can see that. And then you want a notice of motion for what you're asking for in your motion that goes to the courts also. And then anytime you file a motion with the courts, you need to have 4 copies. One for yourself that you get file stamped, because I've filed cases this thick And the DA's office lost them, and so did the judge. You know, never seen this. What do you mean, motions? You filed motions? Absolutely. Why is it that I'm the only one with a filed stamped copy? You know, how can you lose it and the DA's office lose it? You know, that falls under RICO statutes. You know, but at any rate, I filed a motion for dismissal for lack of jurisdiction, and it doesn't matter what kind of case you're in, if it's traffic, if it's family court, if it's civil, administrative, legislative, it doesn't matter. You know, you always want to file a motion for dismissal if you are the defendant, that is, for lack of jurisdiction. And, you know, first reasons are what we've already went through as far as foreign agent registration statements and so forth. The other one is, another reason would be, I believe in the Texas Constitution, it's Article 2, Section 1, for separation of powers doctrine, and they're in violation of that. They created legislation, and through this legislation, they have created administrative courts and proceedings, and then they also have judicial proceedings. And so the first question you want to ask up there is this an administrative hearing or is this a judicial hearing? I demand a judicial hearing. Never accept an administrative procedure. When you are the defendant, you want a judicial proceeding in there. And the reason why is because if it's administrative, they're not bound to anything. They're not bound to the Constitution, and they can hold you liable for all these statutes and stuff that are in contradistinction to your constitutional rights. And so what I said on this one is James D. Harden, by restricted appearance under Rule E8 of the Supplemental Rules for Certain Admiralty and Maritime Claims, hereby invokes the common law jurisdiction. You must invoke the common law jurisdiction always, right off the bat, of this court by virtue of Article 1, Section 10. And Article 1, Section 10 of your Texas Constitution states that any defendant in any criminal proceeding has the rights to defend himself or by counsel or by both. And as Mike saw in my case, they tried to take me out in the hallway, you know, and talk to me about it. And I said, hey, I know where they're going with this, you know. They're trying to create a little mock trial deal here. So when they asked me to come out to the hallway, I want you to come with me. And when they ask you who you are, you tell them you're a friend, a witness, and counsel. And so, sure enough, you know, we all go out into the hallway there, and the county criminal courthouse, court number 1. And this Robert Summerlin guy, they sicked him on me because, first of all, to back up a little bit, I filed these motions. The judge is up there reading through them and he's like looking around, reading some more, and he looks around, you know, and then he has this woman come up here and says, hey, you know, the judge wants to speak with you. So I went up there and he goes, who wrote these motions? And I said, I did. And he goes, well, how do you know all this, you know? And where'd you get it from? And I said, well, I've been studying law for about 5 years now, and I did it myself. And he goes, well, what kind of law? And I said, constitutional law and American jurisprudence. And American jurisprudence is in line with the Constitution at all times. And if you look up the definition to am jur, it says it's the conscience of the law. And so what I did in these motions, and there's copies available for everyone if you want to get a copy and go through them as we go, is they're already in their appealable form. And what I mean by that is when you go out and the judge says, you know, I'm dismissing this is a frivolous motion. And then, of course, your first response to that would be, okay, sir, if it's frivolous, of course, you're prepared to tell me by what grounds is it frivolous. And force him to tell you right then. You know, too many people go into the courts and the judge says, I'm dismissing this is a frivolous motion. And they go, oh, okay. And they walk out a loser, you know. Make the judge tell you, by what grounds is it frivolous? And I hereby request opportunity to correct that frivolous portion that you say you're dismissing it for. And tell them that you are demanding the right for that opportunity to amend it and to correct anything that might be frivolous in it. And so this woman comes up to me and says, you Mr. Hardin? I said, yes, I am. She goes, well, I'm looking here at your case, and I'll show you served 2 days in jail, and the fine for driving on a suspended driver's license is 3 days in jail and a $100 fine. So you served 2. If you're willing to serve 1 more day and pay us $100, then we'll just dismiss this. I looked at her. I said, how about no, and how about we go to trial? And she immediately picks up the phone, and then the judge picks up the phone, and then she hangs up, the judge hangs up, and he picks up the phone again, and he keeps on reading through my motion, and you see him da-da-da-da, and he hangs it up, and about a couple of minutes later, you see him steadily looking up like he's looking for somebody, and finally, I guess the person he was waiting on arrived. They called in the big dogs for me, and decided that I was about to chew that average prosecutor up there, and that they better get somebody else who carried a bigger load, So they sent the chief prosecutor for criminal court number 1, Robert Summerlin, and he came in, and that's when he asked me, am I James Hardin? I said yes, and he tried to take me out in the hallway, and Mike Hawkins is with me. He's like 6'5", 6'6", and probably weighs about 300 pounds, and big old beard, and he's just a huge guy, So we're standing out in the hallway, and Mike's standing like right here, and I'm standing right here, and this Robert Summerlin, DA, is standing here, and he's trying to talk to me, and he can't help but notice this huge figure right here, So he looks at me and goes, who are you? And he goes, friend, witness, counsel. And first words out of his mouth, well, are you a member of the bar? He goes, I would never. And so he goes, well, if you're not a member of the bar, then you can go to jail trying to be his counsel. And he goes, whatever, man, but I'm not a member of the bar, and I'm his counsel and a witness here today. And that guy goes, no, you need to leave. You get out of here right now. Mike goes, no, I think I'll just stay here. And Mike's looking down at this guy, and this guy's looking up at Mike like this, and he says, you need to leave right now or I'll have you arrested. And Mike looks around and goes, for what? Standing in a public corridor? So after that, the guy just starts twitching like this, And he goes, come with me. And he gets totally irate and starts going back down the hallway to go back around into the main entrance of the courtroom. And he's twitching like this, and we get up to the bar point, which is the section that separates the folks that look on to the proceedings from the members of the bar and the defendants and plaintiffs and judges and bailiffs and so forth. And we get right there, and he turns around and he goes, you stay here, and you come with me. And he's shaking like this and screaming and everything in the middle of the courtroom. And I knew what he wanted. He wanted Mike to sit down. He wanted me to go to the back. And so I tell Mike, I said, Mike, he wants you to go with him, man. I'll see you in a few minutes, And, no, you stay here and sit down, and you come with me. And he's totally losing it. We walk past the bar and get up by the judge, and the judge is here and the bailiff's over here, and this Robert Summerlin, chief prosecutor for the DA's office for criminal court number 1, looks at the bailiff and says, you make him sit down. Make him stay back there. Make him sit down. And the bailiff's looking at him like, man, you're losing it, dude. And, of course, he can't be prejudiced or anything, so he walks up to the bar and says, there's several people standing up back there and talking and everything. And he says, ladies and gentlemen, we're having an issue in the court. I need to ask you all to please have a seat. And so they do, and he takes me in the back and takes me right into the judge's chambers. And they start talking to me about my motions and everything. And then he goes, oh, wait, I just remembered that when I'm talking to you, there's not supposed to be any other parties involved, and I got to take you around here. So he takes me out of the judge's chambers, say this table's the wall, where the judge's office is to his back. He takes me around to the door on the other side of the wall, and sits down at a desk there, and I sit down, and he starts telling me, well, first thing you need to do is get an attorney, and na-na-na. And I said, well, obviously you haven't even read my motions to even tell me that. Right on there it says sui juris, and sui juris means that I'm capable of handling my own legal affairs and that I don't need an attorney. And he goes, a motion? Like you didn't even know that I filed it, The judge is up there like this, reading it for probably 15 minutes before he even called Summerlin in. So anyway, he starts telling me all this stuff, and I said, and besides, I don't think that that judge even has the authority to hear me make a plea today of guilty or not guilty or any other plea, because I'm still waiting on his oath of office, and I don't even know if he has the authority to be sitting as a judge. And he goes, well, how about I go get the judge and have him arrest you and show you how much authority he has. And I says, are you threatening me? And I was like, are you threatening me? I said, I in no way was ever threatening you, and now you're threatening me of arrest. I said, you're just a DA. You don't have the right to threaten me. I think I'll file a complaint against you for ethics violations. And he goes, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Puts his heads in his hands right there on the desk and starts saying, what am I going to do? And goes, come on. And he gets back and he takes me back into the judge's chambers. And he goes, Your Honor, I tried to tell Mr. Hardin that he needs an attorney. He refuses to hire one and says he's going to proceed with trial and on his own. And the judge goes, well, Mr. Hardin, I read your complaint, and I'm going to dismiss it. It's frivolous. I said, well, of course, if it's frivolous, you're ready and prepared to tell me by what grounds it's frivolous. And his eyes just get big, and the DA goes, well, what I'm going to do is make sure there is an attorney around so that if Mr. Hardin has any emergencies, that there will be an attorney on standby for him. And I said, I object. I object to this. I said, there's no way. There might be an emergency on you folks' behalf and on the court's behalf, but I don't perceive there being an emergency on my behalf. And I said, besides, haven't you read Corpus Juris Secundum? The moment you hire an attorney, you admit and give yourself as a ward of the court. And once you are a ward of a court, you look up in Corpus Juris Secundum, and it defines ward of the court as a infant or person of unsound mind who is incapable of handling his own legal affairs. And I said, I don't think I'm of unsound mind, and I'm too tall to be an infant, so, I don't think that that's a good idea either. And he goes, the judge says, well, Mr. Hardin, just think about it. He goes, say you're, out on the road and you're driving. And I said, I object. Driving is regulated occupation for hire. I'm a traveler. And his eyes get all big again, and he says, well, hypothetically, say you're driving down the road and this woman, hits you, and she doesn't have a license because it's suspended, and most likely, she won't have insurance either. And I said, well, that's why if you're worried about things like that, you get underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage for yourself, And I said, but anyway, I don't see how this pertains, And he continues to try to explain, hypothetically all these different issues. And I said, I don't mean to interrupt you, I said, but we could sit here for days and talk about hypothetical situations and what ifs. I said, however, not one thing you brought up so far gives you the right to take my constitutional rights of traveling unrestricted. And unrestricted means I shouldn't have to have a license. I shouldn't have to be worried about if my stickers are good or if my front plate says Jesus is Lord instead of Texas 3TZ- whatever, And so then at that time, the DA's office guy, Robert Summerlin, starts freaking out again. Okay, this can be heard at trial. He's trying to get me out of there then. And then he sets it up for trial. He goes up to the front clerk, says Mr. Hardin is going to be going pro se, and I said, no, I'm not. And he goes, well, you just said you're representing yourself. And I said, no, I did not. I never told you I'm representing myself. I am myself. And he goes, well, so Mr. Harden is going to be here without attorneys, and we're setting this up for trial. And the lady goes, you know, knowing that under Article 1, Section 10 of the Texas Constitution, it says that anyone under as a defendant for a criminal offense has rights to a speedy trial. And I invoked my Article 1, Section 10 right off the bat in my notices and everything else, and she was aware of that, and she knew that. She's looking at the docket and goes, sir, the next trial date isn't until January 22nd. You know, like, this isn't a speedy trial that you're trying to do here, you know. What are you going to do? And he looks at me, and at that time I had a driving permit issued through the United Nations that was good in 176 countries. And, you know, I was like pretty upset about this Texas driver's license issue because it was all over a case that had been dismissed. It was over, they got me, I was in an accident, let's see here, back in 99, and they said I was guilty for failure to maintain or control speed, resulting in a accident, and then got me for no insurance and on, and you know, vehicle registration and all this. But at that time, I did have a Texas driver's license, you know, so they just wrote me my citations, and then I went to court and beat them at trial, and they dismissed it. I filed my motions and everything, and invoked common law jury, and I said, you're depriving me of my rights, you know, here. The legislature has created this municipal corporation that is only required to set forth for people who are under criminal offenses here for 6 jury members. I said, I have the right to 12, neither more nor less. And I filed a motion on Article 3, Court and Judge, and talked about all this, and then a motion for trial by common law jury, which is 12 juror members of my peers, neither more nor less. And so we go into court, and they start getting their jury in there, and I just keep dismissing them, you know. They're not of my peers. I have the right to jury members of my peers, and, you know, this guy says he believes in God, but who is your God? You know, if it's Buddha, then you're not of my peers, because my God is Jesus Christ. And so I'd ask them just simple questions like this, and then, of course, you know, if not that I'm prejudiced or anything, but if they were black or Hispanic or Asian or anything like that, then they're automatically disqualified. They're not of my peers. I'm not prejudiced, but if a black man was in there, he would have the right to a jury of his peers, which would not include a white man, you know. So I kept dismissing them for that reason. Well, we went through everybody they had that day, and then the judge called me back up, and he decides, well, I'm just going to roll on this motion anyway. And I said, you mean the motion you just admitted you've never seen? And he goes, yeah. And so I have my Black's Law Dictionary, and I pop it open. I said, all right, well, right now, invoking, how to say, subpoena ducis, or tecum, all court case sites and everything else that I quoted in my briefs to be brought forward and put in my record under subpoena ducis tecum. And what else was it? Well, and then I told them that I'm piercing the corporate veil, because if you don't pierce their corporate veil, then they can do whatever they want, you know. You pierce the corporate veil, they can't hide behind it as it's corporate veil anymore, you know. So you pierce that right off the bat. And I said, okay, and now I'm piercing the corporate veil, holding all officers, agents, employees, clerks, etc., personally liable for any constitutional deprivation of rights that I may incur today during these proceedings. And I went on, and I had my Black's Law Dictionary already tabbed, and the DA, I object, Your Honor. And I look at him, and the judge looks at him and goes, for what? And he goes, he's just trying to confuse the court with all this Black's Law Dictionary stuff. And I said, well, Your Honor, with all due respect, the only reason I brought my dictionary in here is to see to it that the court is not confused in any of the matters before the court, and to see to it that everything and everyone understands the definitions and the wordings that I'm presenting today. Excuse me. And judge overrules, allows me to proceed, and then says that he's going to go ahead and make a ruling on this. And I said, I object, for lack of jurisdiction, and you haven't even seen my motions. You haven't even read them yet. And so he says, well, I'm going to rule anyway. I said, all right, then I need a continuance then, because it's obvious that you guys are trying to deprive me and coerce me in order to extort monies from me. And I think I need to come back with counsel. So he resets it, and then I did a judicial notice. There's a difference between a motion and a judicial notice. When you just file a motion, you're motioning the court to rule in your favor, or you're praying, for the court to rule in a certain way in your favor. Well, when you give them a judicial notice, you're now putting them on notice judicially of certain facts, and they can no longer, like a motion, they can say, well, this is frivolous or whatever. Well, a judicial notice, they can't just say that's frivolous. You've been noticed of certain facts under affidavit, and they are personally liable now because you have judicially noticed them if they continue to let things go like they have been. And so I judicially noticed him, and the next time I was in court, he's reading my judicial notice, and he says, yeah, I see you demand this and you demand that, and I said, yes, I do, and so at any rate, it didn't go to trial. At that point in time, the judge decided that I had said enough and said, I'm dismissing this, and slapped his little hammer down, and the DA goes, I object, Your Honor. We haven't even went to trial. And he says, I don't think you want to go to trial. As I said, this case is dismissed. And so I get this notice in the mail over this same matter from Linda Boleen. She's the manager of the Safety Responsibility Bureau, Texas Department of Safety, about a year later, telling me that somebody had went and claimed to them that they had damages, and that if I had anything in evidence to prove otherwise, that I needed to present it to them. So that's what I did, and I sent her a letter stating, that I received your letter on 8/20. The papers herewith shall show I went to the courthouse that evening to get the court records that pertain to case number 9624396, as indicated in your letter. The court clerk, Beverly Jones, contacted me today on 8:30 and informed me she now had all the papers in the archives in her possession that I requested in order that I may properly answer to your letter and demands. I have made copies of said papers and sent them along with this letter to you. As the highlighted area shall show, the court has ruled in my favor in this matter and dismissed the case. That should dissolve request number 2 in your letter. As to number 3 of your letter, Felicia Cormier signed, and what they asked for is the folks that were involved in the accident, they wanted signed affidavits from these folks saying that they didn't have damages by me. And
who are these people who were asking for all this?
The Texas Department of Public Safety, Safety Responsibility Bureau. And so,
the Safety Responsibility Bureau?
Right. And so what happened is,
like
one of
the
the
SS?
attorneys, one of the attorneys for this other guy, not Felicia Cormier, he failed to show up in court, and so he lost his standing right there. And then Felicia signed and says, I do not wish to testify against the defendant in this case, Felicia Cormier, 52799. And so I get copies of all this stuff, in which, by the way, if it's already archived, you have to pay $3 for a coupon at the municipal courthouse. You have to pay for this coupon for every case that you want. And since I decided to go ahead and pull all my records from the past, year and a half, I had to fill out a separate coupon for every single case and pay them $3 per coupon for them to go to the archives and give me copies of my own records.
Which is just like a fence that they put up to your own information.
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, it's just something else to put you off.
They just don't have it.
And again, as it's been stated, that traffic, they learned long ago that traffic citations are one of the best ways to just engulf massive amounts of money from the citizenry. And that's exactly, I mean, coupons, and then they force you to come to the court, and then you got to pay for their parking, and on and on and on. So, I mean, it's a massive economic industry going on here, and it's all about money. And the bottom line is in another motion I filed for lack of jurisdiction, I stated that the judges were merely revenue agents collecting money for the International Monetary Fund, and which is true because they've all incorporated, and all the money does not go into the state. They go into slush funds here and there and everywhere else. And the bottom line is they are collecting money for the International Monetary Fund, and everything that we as citizens think we own. If you look at your title, say you have a car title, and it's been paid off for 10 years, and you look at it, it says certificate of title. It's not an actual title. You can only have a certificate of title because the World Bank and the IMF hold all the titles and land titles unless you write and do genealogy on your land and show that it was once held in allodial status. And there's two types of titles also, by the way. There's feudal titles, which is like the folks who first came here to America. They were subjects to the king. And so they own nothing. Everything that they thought they owned was really owned by the king, and that's owing vestige, to a superior lord. And so it's held either in feudal status or allodial status, which means there is no one. In other words, they can't come after the fact and say, hey, you didn't pay these $200 on taxes, so we're going to take your home. Well, you can't do that. I own it in allodial status. You don't have the right to take my home because I own it in allodial status, and I don't promise, and I have no vestiges or anything of that sort promising my title to anyone greater than myself or to who I call my Lord Jesus Christ. And He's provided me personally with everything that I have, and the King has provided me with nothing but slavery. And so what happened is, after our folks had our civil wars and stuff in America, they decided that, it comes back to Runnymede, Our folks in English holding titles of nobility and so forth fought their ways through the king's army and put muskets to King George's head and said, we're not sending our wealth and our sweat overseas to you any longer. And if you don't like this, then you can die today. Or you can sign this contract called the Magna Carta, and we will be free men in America now. And that's where the word freemen came from. We became freemen since the signing of the Magna Carta, since our forefathers put their muskets to the head of King George and said, this far and no further. We're drawing our line in the sand right now, right here. And that's what happened. So at that point we became freemen. And somehow, through the World Banks and emergency war powers and stuff like that, they've come back through economics and deceived us all through coercive contracts, unrevealed contracts, and such of the sort, to pledge everything we own to pay the debt of this country's national deficit. And that's a whole nother issue. The national deficit, first of all, when anybody claims bankruptcy, it's added to the insolvency nature of our national deficit. So all these folks, every Congress member, every single member of Congress has declared bankruptcy at least 2 or 3 times. And why? I mean, these people are the ones up there writing the laws and stuff and looking at all the documents and are supposed to be there for the people. And they're claiming bankruptcy and adding that debt on top of our debt, which everything we own, going back to the issue of titles, has been pledged and promised to pay our national deficit. And part of that debt is the interest owed on a Federal Reserve note. You have a boat note, a car note, a house note. A note means that you owe. And when they took our lawful money away, our gold and silver coin, which, by the way, if you go into the records on that, it clearly states that anyone who defaces our coin or robs from our coin, like how they used to, they got the little ridges. Well, they would grind the ridges off and make it a smooth coin and still call it an ounce, And by the time the shrewd goldsmiths did this to 100 coins that passed through them, they had a couple ounces of gold. And they were robbing our monetary system. And so there was a law passed that said that for anyone who does this shall suffer death. That is the penalty. It is a felony offense, and the punishment is death. So not only since the president declared us bankrupt in 1933, and then they further down the road kept going on, 1954, 1960s, 1970s. They keep on reiterating the national emergencies and stuff. And that's another argument that you can use in court. Hey, we're under the Emergency War Powers Act right now. If we are under Emergency War Powers Act, all courts should be closed. Why is it that you have this massive monetary funnel going on still, sucking the wealth out of the citizenry, when you have it clearly admitted that we are in a state of emergency? And the presidents have all reiterated this over and over and over and over again. And meanwhile, they've taken our lawful money and replaced it with Federal Reserve notes. And what they did is when they created the notes, they didn't create the interest on those notes. So it's impossible to pay. If I say, okay, I'm going to create $10 and I'm going to give you folks all $1 a piece, and you go out into the country and you buy, sell, and trade, and for this loan of $1, you're going to pay me 10% interest on it, And say you go out and you buy, sell, and trade and everything, and you screw everybody you dealt with, so at the end of the year you still come back, because there's only $10 in the land. See, I created it. And at the end of the year you come back and you go, here's your $1 back. Now we're even. No, you owe me 10% interest on that $1. Well, where am I going to get it from? It wasn't created. I didn't create the interest when I created the dollars. So it's impossible to pay back. And they know this. They flat out admitted that they are operating in absurdity. They've admitted it. They know that they are operating in absurdity. And then they want to come and say that, we have mental problems. No, you have mental problems. You are operating a system of absurdity, and you know this. You have admitted it on the record. And you've got this debt here now that there's no way to pay back. And what you've done is you created this world peace organization called the United Nations, and everywhere that they go, every single country they went has not been peace. It has been famine, war, and death. Everywhere they've went. They've never went anywhere where there's not been famine, war, and death. They are not a peace organization. The land was donated by the Rockefellers. The building that sits on the land was donated by the Rockefellers. Is this a coincidence, I don't think so. There's a small elite group who have no interest but their own, and the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars Research Technical Manual 73-949, I believe it is, they outright admit that they have declared war upon the American people through economics and economics and brainwashing. You know, so they created a system, and they figured out back then, this small group of elites, this was back in 1954, and then the manual was written in 74, I believe, and it's clearly or 72, it clearly states in there that they've declared war on us, and that they figured out that they could control the world through a push of a button. And, yes.
James, you mentioned earlier about titles, including allodial title. Do you know, or do you know of anyone who does know how to proceed with getting an allodial title to property if you have all the property's genealogy?
Yes. You first just have to do your genealogy on the property to prove it was once held in allodial status.
Okay, how?
And if it was ever held in allodial status, it could never become feudal again. Once it's allodial, it's owned outright, it's been paid for. There can't be any debts placed upon it. And so, if you can trace, well, and the other thing is you got to have it paid off. You can't owe a bank and try and get a allodial title on your property.
But if you can go back, this is just an example. I own a piece of property that is paid for, and I can trace the property's genealogy back to the original Texas land grant. Is that, would you say that's enough genealogy?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because if you've got it back that far, it shows on there that it was held in allodial status. So if it was held in allodial status then, and now there is no debts owing on it, you know, you didn't borrow money from the banks to purchase this property, and it's paid off in full, then you should be able to get allodial status on that property again.
Who would you send your notices to? Where would you send them, and how long does it take to get a confirmation back?
It takes, depending on how you process your information, it could take different periods of time. There is a couple in the AAT, Chuck and Carolyn Guard, and they have done this and have received their allodial status on their home, and their home is in the middle of a nice subdivision, and the bottom line is they paid that home off and then proved that the property that home sits on was once held in allodial status. So once you get to that point, then it doesn't matter, you know, if a house is on it that didn't used to be or whatever. But to tell you the truth, that would be the one that I would suggest you talk to, because they have personally done it. But the bottom line is, if you can prove it, and if it's paid off, and you've done the genealogy to prove that it was once held in allodial status, then you can get it in allodial status for yourself. And once you have that, you pay no more property taxes. There's 12 million Amish, I believe, in this country that do not pay taxes. They do not pay property taxes, road taxes, any of this. And they own all their property outright in allodial status. Now, their roads may be a little rough because the state's not going to come in and pay for their roads to be redone, because they're not paying them the taxes for that purpose. But, you know, that's a fight that you got to be willing to either deal with, the chug hose in your road or not, you know. You might want to be free rather than be a bond slave, and the little chug hose might be a small price to pay.
What's the definition of allodial status?
Allodial means...
allodial or illodial?
Allodial, A-L-L, allodial. And it means owned outright. There's no vestige or homage owing to any superior lord. If you look
Like
at
allodial
right.
would be like asexual, meaning without a load, without someone above it
Right,
holding it down or holding it entitled to it or
right.
something against it. On the outside of allodial.
A simple explanation means that you actually own the dirt,
Yes.
because any other type of title means that all you own is the air above the surface.
It doesn't even mean that you own that. It means that you're being afforded the opportunity to exactly the privilege.
But if you have a lodial title, you own the
That
dirt.
yes, absolutely. And I kind of got off track of traffic, but the reason was so that you guys could understand the whole bigger picture and understand why it's all coming together and why they're creating municipal corporations and Harris County Corporation is specifically mentioned in my Title 42 lawsuit that I'm about to file. And Harris County is mentioned because they are a municipal corporation. And on page, and see, the bottom line is the fact that I was telling you about this foreign agent issue. You got to look at beneath the surface of these people and their organizations. And the whole way, I mean, like for Secretary of Treasury, for instance, Robert Rubin, he is now, by Title 22, international organizations, been declared to be the governor of the fund and World Bank, which is clearly not any part of the American land or country or the several states of the Union. They are a foreign entity. And if you believe on simple biblical principles, no man can have two gods. For he will love the one and hate the other, or cling to the one and despise the other. And if you look at it under those circumstances and you go, wow, man, how is this guy the Secretary of my Treasury for America, yet he's been appointed as the governor and receiver of our nation's national deficit? Conflict of interest. He is representing a foreign power. And to try and hold an oath-bearing office such as Secretary of the Treasury of the United States of America, I mean, that's treason against his country. Because every man is going to be, how can I word it, loyal to the hand that feeds him. And if you are paid by the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, then how can you be loyal to the citizens of America and the several states thereof?
You're right.
So, this is a massive conspiracy, and traffic is just a small portion of what they're doing. And that's why I got out into the bigger scope of it all. So Harris County has created this, I'm trying to find it here. Do you remember where I mentioned that? Under actual background. In the copy of this title, it's a rough draft, by the way, it hasn't been filed yet. It mentions the incorporation of the county.
Which document?
This is the Title 42 lawsuit that I'll be filing against the judges and the attorneys and the officers in Harris County and John Doe's and Jane Roe's 1 through 100 that will be named after further discovery. So, they come in and incorporated everything, and all corporations get double taxed, and then it's a massive conspiracy. So the whole point to telling you all this is there's a billion reasons to go in and object to the jurisdiction right off the bat. I mean, either they're foreign agents, they're members of the bar, which has, again, private dues-paying, card-carrying members to a private club, and they're not any part of the local, state, or federal government. And now you'll find that the State Bar of Texas is writing legislation for us. And I'm like, what? Conflict of interest, man. How can this private club write the legislation for the laws that will apply to the citizenry? But it's the same with the IRS. How can the IRS tax us when they are no part of our government? And they're not. They're a private entity. And that's how they do it. Bottom line, it's all through smoke and mirrors and deception. And if you don't go in right off the bat and object to them and object to the jurisdiction and tell them you don't have jurisdiction, I'm a living soul plaintiff. I bleed. I'm not a fictitious creation of paperwork, you know. Yes.
Well, you're kind of doing things along those lines too. By going through the codes and analyzing what the person is, it's generally going to be corporation.
Yes.
That's most clear in the Code of Criminal Procedure.
Yes,
The only place that defines person is Article 1780. There it says person, he, him include corporation, association.
Right.
Provides
Our
that word.
partnership
And in there's rule 52, Texas Rules of Civil Procedure, alleging a corporation, there it says allegation of corporation may soon be correct unless affidavit submitted by the adverse party.
right.
So basically all you do is put in a affidavit, let them know that you're not a corporation.
Right.
And, you know, they know what they're doing, which municipal and justice courts really don't, for the most part. And some way or another, it tends to go away. You know,
Right.
they'll never say that that was good paper and that's why we're doing it, but
Right.
it
Well,
goes
you're
away somehow or
absolutely
another.
right. You're
I would
absolutely right.
imagine if they really want to be successful, they have to find the stupidest people they can to work for them.
Well, of course. And it mentions that in Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. It says that there must the education provided to the lower class citizenry must be of the poorest sort. That way they can never figure out, you know, all the stuff that's going on and how they're being raped and everything, and everything they own is being stolen from them. And they said that this is a necessity for the inferior ruling upper class to keep some sort of social order maintained. And they outright admit that these folks who will not use their brains are no better than animals who have no capability of using their brains and are the same as steaks on the table.
Yeah.
So if you go in and hire an attorney right off the bat instead of going in on your own and objecting to them appointing an attorney or anything, the moment you do, you're a subject of the court, or a ward of the court. When you're a ward of the court, you're immediately defined as an infant person of unsound mind who is incapable of handling his own affairs. In other words, you're stupid. We know that, or you wouldn't have hired him.
Right, you surrendered in effect.
Exactly. And you've left your rights behind at that point.
Wow, that's pretty true.
Yes.
James, that trial or hearing that you were describing with the DA and the judge earlier, at one point in time I thought you said the judge said he was going to dismiss the case, but that didn't end up happening, did it?
No. I'm going in Wednesday. Since got records I faxed in. See, I sent this stuff all to them, the records that I went to the court and paid for their little coupons and everything to get my own records. And I sent it certified mail. Everything you send any government agency or so-called government agency, don't send it unless it's certified mail. Because they'll say, we didn't get it, you know. What are you talking about? Meanwhile, my license was suspended for a year and I didn't even know it, you know. And they never answered me back, so meantime I'm thinking, okay, well, they must have cleared it up then, you know, and I don't have access to a police computer or anything, and I didn't get pulled over, so I didn't know. Well, then I get pulled over, and they say, hey, you know, your stuff's suspended, man. I should be taking you to jail right now. And thank God the Lord was with me, obviously, and he was a man of character, you know, and wasn't one like I met today who was totally abusive of his authority. So I called him up and I said, listen, I got certified mail return receipts here that your agency, Safety Responsibility Bureau, Texas Department of Public Safety, received this September 5th of 2000 by Joel Rodriguez. And, oh, really? Our computers don't show you even responded. So she says, fax this to me. So I faxed it to her. They realize the state's in error, and they immediately reinstate my license. which is, by the way, a government-granted privilege to do something which would otherwise be illegal or unlawful. So keep that in mind too. The definition to license is a government-granted privilege to do something that would otherwise be illegal or unlawful.
I've heard that phrase a lot. Driving is not a right, it's a privilege.
It is. Driving is a privilege because driving is regulated occupation for hire. You are not a driver, you're a traveler. Every living soul or citizen has the right to travel unrestricted down the highways and byways of the several states of the Union without being harassed or restricted or saying, well, you can have this right so long as you pay me $80 to register that truck and go get this smog test for $40 and make sure you got some insurance. It costs you $100 a month and then you can go. Well, that's a restriction on my inalienable right to travel. You know, all of those are. And you have to argue that point. And they will, of course, come back and say, well, it's for the necessary safety and well-being of the general public. Well, who says that? You? My forefathers, who bled the grounds red, gave me my rights. And the one that gave them rights were the ones, like when Christopher Columbus wrote in his personal diary and journal on his way, he said that he didn't know where he was going, but he knew it was possible because the Lord was leading him through divine scripture. And our first Constitution, Bill Martin's aware of this, through Connecticut, wasn't it? Which one was it? The first one ratified?
Delaware was.
Delaware, yes. It outright says that who their oath is to, and it's to Jesus Christ. And this has been from the inception of our country. And if you look around, our Constitution is the only one that has stood for over 200 years. And why? Because all laws, rules, and regulations repugnant to it are null and void. Take a break? Okay. 4 minutes? Okay.
When you challenge another authority, though, James, what you should do, have you ever read that case about Lansing versus Smith, 1828 case?
No, sir.
Oh, y'all probably like to get it used to the case.
All right.
It tells you who you are.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
But going back, if you got another minute on these tickets, most people don't understand where this money goes. On that ticket, when you get a ticket today, and it hits that courthouse, or downtown, where it goes, county, city, wherever, it becomes commercial paper.
Right.
That means that ticket is already, somebody bought that, say it's a $100 ticket. Somebody in powers to be down there has bought that ticket. They might only give $20 more, but they bought that ticket. Now, when that ticket is paid, they get the money. Right?
Right. It's like buying out a loan.
Right. So it's all just a big old scam.
So where does the money
Somebody
go?
goes in, pardon me?
So where does the money actually wind up? In whose pocket?
Well, whoever buys that ticket owns that ticket.
Well, where do they buy the tickets?
They get them. You know, the judge might own it. The judge might say he wants it. Or whoever's in the power now. There's just a very, very few elite people now.
Can you warrior that out?
Yeah.
What's that? Can you do warrior requests
down
about
right
that?
away either. Say that again? I said our forefathers used to hang people like that.
Oh, yeah.
And they leave them there.
Comprehensive annual financial report.
Yes. That's what I was referring to when I said slush funds.
Okay. In 1998, the state of Texas, now every entity has a separate set of books that they hide from the people. They got one they let you see, which is always in the red.
Right.
And then they have this other one called the CAFR, which is Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Now, in 1998, when I first heard about this, Texas, just the state of Texas, had over $6 trillion in that account. Now, that $6 trillion, they could give every man, woman, and child in this state $1 million and still run this state from now on with just the interest that the rest of the money would make.
Right.
But every state, every county, every city, every public entity that takes in money has set aside money.
And they've now incorporated them all also. So what happened to our Republican form of government? It's obsolete now. And until we come in and say we have the right to a Republican form of government, and I am here today standing on my forefathers' grounds, and I am reserving that right to myself and taking it again from you. And if you guys want to know more about that, the John Nelson seminars goes into that extremely deep. And they're available here, the tapes. They're, 90 minutes of tape. I believe it was 4 or 5 days worth of seminars, and they are 30 hours, I think, excluding breaks. None of that stuff's in there. And it's over 4,000 pages of certified documents, court documents and stuff like that. And there's motions in there and stuff also that talk about our courts and how 44 federal judges where they seized a daycare center, and they were suing. It's Atkins et al. Versus U.S. Atkins et al. And well, the daycare center was a separate issue, I'm sorry. But 44 federal judges went to the government and said, our guaranteed compensation is being diminished. And by the Constitution, Article 3, it says that in no way can our compensations be diminished in any way. And we will no longer uphold the law or any substantive remedy thereof until all of us judges are dead. And they sought relief from 1969 to 1970 something, 6 or something like that, with interest and penalties on the deflation of our new Federal Reserve notes, and said that by receiving these notes, and since there was deflation of the notes and they became bills of debt credit, that their guaranteed compensations had been diminished. And in their report and in their prayer, they declared the people and the children as a large club who had no remedy, and sought protection for themselves at the demise of the people, knowing that such heinous acts had been committed against the people, and sought protection for themselves only, and classified us as a large club who had no remedy. And if you look that up, it's Atkins, A-T-K-I-N-S, et al. Versus U.S. And there's copies of that case in John Nelson's seminar material. And, I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on, where, you know, these folks holding public offices are well aware of what's going on, and they're doing nothing about it.
One thing on that CAFR, a judge can sit on the bench for 1 year and draw $5 million out of that account, CAFR account.
It's amazing.
Drawn out for what?
For whatever purposes he thinks necessary. Like he may think it's necessary to have a new home. He thinks he works hard and he deserves it. And he can demand it.
Interest in taking your money.
And if you read those cases in that John Nelson seminar, you'll also see where senators and stuff can go into our depositories and draw up to $10,000 out a year. Just walk into the doors and go, "Hey guys, I'm here. I won't."
When you said the judge, it dismissed it?
Yes.
If you had said it, get him to dismiss it with prejudice, then they can never bring it back up again, is that right?
Right, and that's what my motions all say, and in fact, this one here, the end of it is the prayer, and it says, the act in question is a valid regulation, and as such is binding upon all who use the highways for the purpose of private gain. Any other construction of this statute would render it unconstitutional as applied to the citizen or any citizen. The accused therefore moves this court to dismiss the charges against him with prejudice. So you always want to ask for that. Always ask for it to be dismissed with prejudice, because then you've created a case site precedent. And not only that, but these motions that you have copies of now are in their appealable form already, as I was saying earlier. Not one definition, not one case site, not one ruling in this entire motion has been overruled. It has been shepherdized. They all still stand to this day. It doesn't matter when they were quoted from, 1800s, many of them from the 1800s. And it defines what an operator is, and what traffic is, what a driver is, and let's see, the surrendering of the rights, and vote and quotes under there, Raleigh versus Lazon, and Stevenson versus Benford, Supra, and Hope versus Henderson, Simmons versus United States. All these cases quoted in these briefs have never been overturned. They still stand as case site precedent to this day. So for a judge to tell you this is a frivolous motion, well, I'm now questioning your competency, sir. Either you have a personal prejudice against me, or you're just outright incompetent because you don't know the difference between a valid brief and one that is frivolous. And that was another thing that I told him that day in the judge's chambers whenever the DA started screaming, okay, all this can be heard at trial. And then consequently, I called down to the court clerk and was trying to find out some information about my trial date on 1/22. And she says, well, I don't show that's set for trial. I'm like, I had a witness standing right there, and he told you set it for trial. And then she says, yeah, he came back and had me change it in the computer to change it to hear motions now. Oh, so now you've not only just denied me my right to a public and speedy trial, and impartial and speedy trial, but you've now changed the non-expedient trial that was 3 months later from trial to a hearing to hear motions. You know, I mean,
not on the record either, because they didn't say it in front of the courtroom.
Exactly, but she admitted to me that the Robert Summerlin came back and had her change it in there to hear motions. And I have my case reset form right here that clearly states it's set. The undersigned defendant and counsel acknowledge this case is reset for trial. Not to hear motions, it's set for trial.
Is that a felony what he did?
Well, I think it's falling under the RICO statutes, because when two or more conspire together to commit a fraud, it's a RICO action.
And something that can be considered ongoing.
Absolutely. And not only that, but as you'll see in the copy that I give you of the rough draft for the Title 42 complaint, it states in there about the same things, you know, that how the fraud is just ongoing and
I was
ongoing.
saying before, but they need to have, their weakness is that they need to have unscrupulous, low mentality people like this guy to do their bidding. That's their weakness. That's why he freaked out, because that's an affront to him personally. He's mentally so small. For anyone to question what he says,
Right.
he just freaks
Exactly.
him right out.
And they're not used to that. They're used to going in there and their God.
Absolute power.
Absolute power, you know, and it's abusive power, by the way.
Did he have a gun too?
I didn't see it, but he definitely didn't try it on me. But bottom line is when folks just go in with attorneys every day, you know, they run amok, because they know that they've got a lynch hold, and we have an attorney here tonight who knows about this personally. The bar has a chokehold upon all them attorneys, and the moment they decide to do what is true and what is right and stand up for the truth, exactly, you get disbarred. And then if that's your only source of income is being an attorney, what do you do then? You know, now they've forced you into poverty. And they've done that for years. That or just flat kill you. You know, for instance, John Nelson's sister was a high-powered attorney working with the government on all these federal land deals where the government's coming in and taking all of our land and turning them into federal parks and stuff, yet we're not allowed on the land. Well, it was our land, you came and stole it from us and then says we can't come on it no more. Well, she was giving him information, you know, copies of documents and stuff like that, and ended up dying of unknown causes. His brother got blown up on a tractor, and the blood's still in his house from when they murdered his child, one of his daughters. And everywhere he goes, if he gets on a plane, he's got a bodyguard with him. The people I learned from, Robert Carey in Las Vegas, Nevada, the IRS came in, took $200,000 out of his personal safe, seized everything he owned, his business, his cars, his house. He was reduced to living in a pull-behind-your-truck little trailer in his mom's backyard, and this guy was a millionaire. And they just hit him hard, and he was introduced to John Nelson, and next thing you know, massive suits. I mean, defendants take a whole page just to list them. I mean, this section right here, I mean, they're just one after another. Secretaries of Treasury, IMF, the World Banks, all of them.
Well, where are they going? What's happening with them?
Well, they're still going, and they filed separate suits later because the courts tried to fraudulently dismiss his case, and he says, hey, now I'm suing you for fraudulently dismissing a valid case. And so they have massive suits going, and he had threats on his life, so now everywhere he goes, he's got a bodyguard with him.
How can he afford that now?
Well, because the cases that he wins, he demands payment in lawful dollars, gold and silver bullion, and lawful dollars minted by the U.S. Treasury. And if you ever buy gold or silver, you know that for a silver dollar, it costs you $10 to get that silver dollar. But it says dollar on it. It don't say $10 or $20, or it says dollar. So he asked for $5 million in gold. Well, $5 million in actual dollars, I mean, just figure it silver-wise. I mean, you know, what's the difference in the price of gold and silver, and what's the difference in that compared to our paper bills of credit, you know? And the state, John Nelson won a case once in Colorado, and the state paid him with a check. He says that was the last check they ever gave me. Because then he sued him for giving him, you know, he asked for lawful dollars, you know, and they paid him with a check, you know, and there's interest-bearing bonds and everything else from the government placed on these Federal Reserve notes and stuff, and he didn't have access to lawful dollars, and so he sued him for, how did he do it, man? I'm trying to remember now. The bottom line was fraud.
You can't pay a debt with a dead instrument.
Exactly. And when he filed under those circumstances, and he won, and he said, they ain't tried to pay me with a check since.
If you want to know where to get that information from, look on the United States Code, Title 12, and Title 18, and Title 31. Surprise you what you might find in there.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to learn all this stuff?
Well, worked for Robert Carey in 1996, and he held a meeting with everybody in his company, and I was one of the new guys, and he said, this is how I pay gold and silver coins, lawful dollars of the United States, minted by the United States Treasury. And I don't take taxes out of your money because I'm not a third-party collector for the Internal Revenue Service. And I'm not going to keep their books and their paperwork for them for free. They want to keep your books and records, let them do it. He goes, but I'm not going to pay a secretary to work 40 hours a week to keep up with your books and records for the IRS. I will pay you lawful dollars, which the IRS does not have the right to tax, and because they only have the right to tax their money, their fraud. You know, they don't have the right to tax lawful money. And so anyway, he says, this is how I pay. Any of you have a problem with that? It's not a problem. You know, you can go right now. And I'm sitting there looking at this guy going, what? You don't pay taxes? You know, I'm all freaking out. Dude, man, you're going to get us all arrested, man. And so I worked for this guy, and I started reading some of his stuff, and this was in Las Vegas, Nevada. And they still have cases going there. I can give you guys the sites and stuff like that, so you can go and pull the records if you'd like for yourself. But he has over 1 million documents filed in the state court, and they keep trying to take it into the federal court, and they keep going, nope. District Court has original jurisdiction for the Republic of Nevada and the citizens thereof, and this is where it's staying in state court. And you read his transcript from the court, and at one point in time the judge actually tells him, you know, I ain't going to do this or that, you know, and Robert Carey tells him, what do you mean you're not? You have to. He goes, have they threatened you? And he goes, well, no, but I'm not going to jail with you. The judge tells him just like that. I mean, what do you think? They've obviously been conspiring in the background, man. The judge is already telling you the outcome of the case before him. I'm not going to jail with you. You know? So, but you're dealing with, and he flat out said, he said, I've told you, and it's in the court transcript, he says, I have told you last week, Mr. Carey, that I hate the IRS too. But they are bigger than you and I. The federal government is bigger than you and I. And I ain't gonna die over it, you know? And it's right in the court transcript, man. It's amazing. You know, I mean, you read it, and it will just, it's almost like, I don't know if you've ever had like a divine revelation, you know? People say God talks to them, you know? And I'm like, what do you mean he talks to you, you know? Are you hearing voices and stuff, or what? But when I say the Lord spoke to me, it's because I prayed, and it was an immediate knowing. You know, the question I asked, I immediately had the answer to. You know, I didn't hear a voice go, the answer to your question, son, is blah, blah, blah. You know, it was an immediate knowing, you know. And that's just a whole nother issue. But anyway.
So that there concludes this first session. And stay tuned for part 2. And so, yeah, there's a lot of good information and some history right there. So, everyone, have a golden day.